And welcome and appreciate you so much for joining me. It's your friend Juck, the freshman class of 2026, a 28-man class. 2025, a 27-man class. In 2025, you also brought in 11 portal guys. You got to assume you'll bring in another dozen this portal class here. That would be 78 guys. Now, you're probably going to carry about 90 to 95 of the eligible 105 spots you can use, which means in the last 2 years, Ohio State will have brought in 80% new guys, 80% new guys. And that is low turnover this day and age in college football, which is unbelievable. When we look at Ohio State right now, it is portal time. The portal is open. We have seen the list of who's leaving here, and there will be more names added to that. But when we look at the process here, they've knocked 2/3 out, right? They got the freshman class done, locked in, contracts settled. That's all good. So for 2026, freshmen done. Now they've gone through the retention part of it, and that's done. They got the pieces that they needed to retain. They had all the meetings, talked to all the players' representation, and the guys who are heading out are heading out. The guys who are staying on the roster, except for maybe a few NFL decisions, that's all done as well. The final piece of this is the portal. That's the final piece to make up the roster and complete the roster for 2026 because there's no spring portal now. So this is it. This is the last step. The players have between the 2nd and the 16th to enter. Of course, you can sign them for, forever. I don't know, a long time after that. But you're generally going to get the guys that you want here relatively quickly. And when we look at the guys so far that have lost, just a quick refresher, the guys that have exited, we've got quarterback Lincoln Keenholz, running backs James Peoples and Sam Dixon, wide receivers Bryson Rogers and Demarion Witten, tight end Jelani Thurman, edge CJ Hicks, Logan George, and Dom Kirks, corner nickel Bryce West, kicker Jackson Corville, punter Nick McClarty. Those two you signed last year in the transfer portal to be here through next year. And some position rooms need some depth. Some position rooms need an impact player, a tier 1A player. When we look at the past two classes, the class of 2024 and the class of 2025, the transfer portal classes, Ohio State seems to have it kind of in the budget to add 3 tier 1A players, the kind of guys that they will pay top dollars for, about 3 of them. Guys where, they don't got to settle. They can go get a top tier guy. Like in 2024, Quinshon Judkins, Will Howard, Caleb Downs, top tier money. They also got Julian Say in that class, but he's a tier 1A guy. They didn't have to pay him right then. They didn't have the money for it, and the Sayans understood that situation. In addition to those top tier guys in 24, they also brought in Seth McLaughlin. Wasn't at that level, kind of a mid-tier guy, but they got that level of production out of him that year. And then they also brought in Will Kazmarek out of the MAC, which ended up being a total steal, getting 2 years out of him. This year, a really, really good year, and a couple other pieces, parts. Then when we look at this 2025 portal class, when we look at the tier 1A guys, they brought in Max Clare, tight end from Purdue, who I believe he set the all-time record for tight end receptions at Ohio State. If not, he was really close. So tier 1A guy there. I don't think they quite paid him tier 1A money, but a big-time addition there. So that worked out really well. Left tackle Ethan Onyanwa out of Rice. That is $1 million that you might as well have set on fire. We'll be talking about that portal bust 10 years from now. And to be fair to Ohio State, not only their fault, there was people lined up to pay that dude a big payday to come to their team as well. It just turns out that they were all wrong. He wasn't a plug and play left tackle. He wasn't a backup left tackle. He wasn't a backup guard. He couldn't play at this level. And it is not often you see everybody miss so bad. Unfortunately, happened to the Buckeyes. Fortunately, they did, luck out on a couple of guys. But they also had another tier 1A guy that didn't work out quite as well as we would have hoped, and that's Bo Atkinson. Bo Atkinson out of North Carolina. A pretty big disappointment. Certainly weren't expecting Zion Grady to pass him up by the end of the year for snaps. were kind of hoping that this would be a guy who would push Caden Curry for reps. Turns out Caden Curry became the best edge in the Big Ten, if not the country. So great stuff there, but not good moving forward, as you do got another year of eligibility out of Bo Atkinson, and he showed you very, very little this past year. Then a tier down, you got Phil Daniels, offensive lineman out of Cincinnati Princeton High School, who went to Minnesota, back to the great state of Ohio. Phil's got a ways to go, and he ended up starting all year, so you got a good starting year out of him. I still think when we look at the offensive line that Phil Daniels at right guard and Ian Moore at right tackle is the way to go. But, plenty of time to talk about that. Then you got a top 10 back, the number 10 back, CJ Donaldson, the 10th rated back in the class. You could have picked a guy like Roman Hemby, the 15th rated back. You could have picked Ahmad Hardy. He was the 7th. You could have picked Kewan Lacey. He was the 18th, but you picked CJ Donaldson. There's a lot of other ones that didn't work out in there. As far as Donaldson, probably right in the middle, as far as, it was all on tape. You knew exactly who you were getting with CJ Donaldson, ton of tape. And I think they got exactly, I actually think they expected more. I think because when we look at how they utilized him early in the season, they utilized him like he was, a normal back. And then they kind of changed it to a short yardage back. So I don't think they quite got what they wanted, but you got value out of him. You didn't get nothing out of him. It wasn't an Ethan Onyanwa situation. Logan George, there's a guy you got nothing out of. You brought in Logan George, who was from the FCS, and I think that was a situation where out of Pocatello, Idaho, his coach, Tommy Togei's high school, a relationship with Larry and said, hey, check out my guy here. And I think that's how that all went down. Buckeyes took a flyer, didn't spend much money. So, whatever, no harm, no foul. But Logan George, Jackson Corvell, the kicker you brought in with 2 years of eligibility, and Nick McClarty, the punter, with 2 years of eligibility. All three of those guys come in, do nothing, exit out. So there you go. As for this upcoming cycle, I want to add in there, Justin Terry. I think you might have got a hit in Justin Terry. At least they really like him. Justin Terry from West Virginia, a kid from Pickerington who the Bucks passed on. He heads to West Virginia. Tyler Bowen brings him back, and they really, really like him so far. Passed up Ethan Onyanwa, who didn't. Anyway, you look at all those players, and how many Tier 1A players do you think Ohio State will put on the roster out of the portal this time around? And if you've only got 3 Tier 1 guys that you can get, where are you putting that money? You look at the top of the board, and of course, Chaz Coleman right at the top of the board as a position of need, a player you're familiar with, that you recruited, who has 2 years of eligibility left, and just showed you right now in the Big Ten that he is ready to roll. This is a guy I did a video on, the biggest miss of the cycle for the Buckeyes. And boy, people gave me a lot of crap. Same people, I bet, are saying, boy, I really want that Chaz Coleman. Ohio State was in on him too late. Kid who was just an unbelievable athletic freak. And not just Ohio State's fault. Everybody was in on him late, but he had camped with them. They had the advantage to see before everybody else what he could become. Big, long, and he is just a ridiculous athlete. The number 1 or number 2 edge rusher in this entire portal cycle. And it looks like things are going really well. He'll be in to visit, but there's competition here. Obviously, there would be competition. One of the competition is Tennessee. Jim Knowles is at Tennessee. Jim Knowles nicknamed him the Chasmanian Devil at Penn State. How much does he like Jim Knowles, want to play for Jim Knowles? Well, he didn't get a ton of snaps with Jim Knowles, particularly in the second half of the season. So I don't think that's going to be some driving force. It's not like Jim Knowles is a guy, and we know this more than anybody, that can get creative with a guy like Chaz and put him in situations to, help him excel. We would think that Matt Patricia can do that. And Matt Patricia showed us that in the first half of the season with Arvell Reese, and then stopped because the Buckeyes stopped playing football in the second half of the season and decided they were going to hold it all off for the postseason, which, different conversation. But Tennessee in there, and Tennessee always comes with big bucks. We know that. They're also desperate. They have now lost 20 players in the portal so far already, 3 of them edges, which frees up a lot of money for them. So Tennessee, a real player for Chaz. You've also got LSU with 20 guys heading out in their portal class. Lane Kiffin's got a pile of money to spend. They've guaranteed him a lot of money to spend. And they've only got like 14 to 16 guys in their recruiting class. He's a portal guy anyway, so he's probably happy with that. But he wants to make a splash. And Chaz would certainly be a splashy one for him. So you got LSU, you got Tennessee, you got Ohio State battling it out for Chaz. How bad do the Buckeyes want him? You know, I think this is a room that you got to get a tier 1 guy. And I don't think that there's many on that level. So it seems like you just got to bite the bullet and you got to pay him. You got to get him at all costs. I don't think you can afford to lose him when you look at the construction of that room. But there are other options. You know, I think you need to add probably maybe 3 defensive linemen total, and definitely some guys with some experience. But you could also maybe look at Amaris Williams, who's entered the portal. Amaris Williams down at Auburn, a guy that's, when you were the class, you brought in Dominic Kirks and Edric Houston, Amaris Williams was right there, got a relationship with Larry. He has played every game since he's been at Auburn. This year he was slated to start, and then he enters the portal with the coaching change. Another one, London Merritt. London Merritt was a Buckeye commit for quite a long time out of IMG, and a kid from Georgia, played his ball in Georgia for the first 3 years, then went to IMG his senior year. Actually, he was on the show with us one time. Really nice kid, really like him. Ended up flipping from Ohio State to Colorado. That could certainly burn the bridge. But Larry Johnson likes to double back on guys that he has a relationship with. He does not like to go make these new relationships. If it's a guy that he's had a relationship with in the past, that's the only reason I bring this up, because it seems like he gravitates towards that. He's a guy who plays the long relationship game and is very ill-suited towards portal recruiting, which you understand. But you got to get it done. It is what it is. So London Merritt in the portal, but it is Antonio O'Berry who's coming in to make a visit on Friday. Antonio O'Berry is a guy who is from Dayton, started his career at Tiffin, then transferred to Youngstown State, then transferred to Gardner-Webb. Last year, 52 tackles, 10 TFLs, and 7 sacks. And he's a very tall, kind of long guy. At 6'6" is what he's listed at. I'm not quite sure he's 6'6", but 6'6", 245 is what they list him at. 1 year of eligibility, grad transfer. So he's an old kid, right? 22, 23 years old. And we look at the FCS. We haven't had a ton of, great stories. Logan George was an FCS guy. That didn't work. But this kid, probably a little better suited. Looks like a better athlete than George, looks longer than George. And, it's cool if you add a guy like this. He's also going to visit Kentucky, West Virginia. But this can't be the only guy. This can't be the headliner edge guy that you add. We're talking about the 40th ranked defensive end in the class. So those are a couple names when we talk about edge. When we talk about linebacker, you got Pickerington native and absolute machine, Raheem Biles from Pickerington, and a guy who went to Pitt, became a total stud, ton of production, and it looks like he is going to visit Miami there. And when we look at the linebacker room, what do you need? You lost Sonny, you lost Darvell. That leaves you with Peyton as the most experienced guy. Peyton wasn't a starter this year, though kind of considered the third starter. Didn't play a ton. I don't think he overly impressed. And then you got Riley, who you think is going to be a total stud, but he hasn't played yet. Played very limited snaps and looked great when he was out there. Do you trust that to be your 2 starters? You got TJ Alford, who in the same class as Riley has flashed as well, but has played even less than Riley. You probably need a top tier linebacker who can come in and definitely play starting snaps. But at the same time, if you relied on that trio and it worked out, it wouldn't be a surprise, right? But how confident can you feel in that? So definitely going to want some help at linebacker as well. And it looked like you might be able to get that in Rasheem Biles. And now it doesn't look like that, as I have stopped in the middle of the show and just got an alert. Doesn't look like that anymore. So what I think you do need to do is definitely spend tier 1A money on a defensive tackle, a one tech, because when you look at the one tech situation, Caden McDonald, no chance he stays, right? And if he's gone, then you got Will Smith Jr., who played really good this year, made a huge step. I don't know that you can count on him as your 45 snap a guy game. Love having him in the combo as like the change of pace guy. But that's where you need that guy, because after him is Eric Mensah, who is, was never going to be like that kind of guy. Then you got Max Roy, who was a freshman this year. And then you got your two freshmen, Ruffin and Perez. So right there is a spot where you need some help. And you got John Walker, potentially with some interest there between the Buckeyes and John Walker. And John Walker, the highest rated recruit in the history of the University of Central Florida, from Kissimmee, a guy who Ohio State was one of his 5 official visits. He had Oklahoma, he had Michigan. It was a real surprise when he chose UCF. One of the reasons he did is because he's really, really shy. He was shy in the recruiting process. Well, now with 2 years of eligibility left, he's all grown up, 40 tackles, 3 TFLs, and 1 sack last year. Big time production from that position, 6'4", 320 pounds. He fits the bill in every way. And personally, that right there, tier 1A money needs to be spent right there on that spot. So at cornerback, Jermaine Matthews, assuming he returns, and he will return. Devin Sanchez, who played a lot this year, and Aaron Scott Jr., who was passed up by Devin Sanchez. Who are your starting corners? Is it Sanchez and Scott, and Jermaine Matthews moves to nickel? Is Jermaine going to be okay with that? What if he's not? What if you got Devin Sanchez, Jermaine Matthews, and Aaron Scott rotating at corner? You got the freshman Jay Timmons and Jordan Thomas. You got Miles Lockhart, who was brought in specifically as a nickel. I don't think he's a guy who's ready to be your starting nickel. I don't really think he's got the size or the skill to really do that at this point. Hopefully I'm not underselling him, but that's kind of what I think of him. Jordan Woods is a guy that's not ready. He's a multi-year project at corner. So it looks like you're lacking a nickel here. You're lacking a nickel. Is that something you want to move Jermaine to? Or is Jermaine even okay with that? Or is he going to hit the portal if you try to do that? Do you bring in a nickel out of the portal? Do you bring in a top tier guy and try to convince him to play nickel? Not sure. Situation there. This is an incredibly light room. This is a really, really light room. And honestly, that's kind of like, that shouldn't happen. To have Jermaine, Sanchez, Scott, Jay Timmons, and Jordan Thomas as your corners. That's really, really light. Moving along on the defensive side of the ball to safety. You lose Caleb. You got Jalen McLean. He'll come back, return to his starting role. Who replaces Caleb? Is it Fahim Delane? Malik Hartford's name has not popped up in the portal yet. Remember, he redshirted, so he's back another year, potentially. Blaine Bradford, the freshman out of Louisiana. Leroy Roker, who was just playing in the playoffs and absolutely lit somebody up. Simeon Caldwell, another freshman. Kamari Bing, another freshman. Deshaun Stewart, a second-year guy. Jalen McLean, Fahim Delane look like your most likely starters here, unless Malik Hartford's got something to say about that. And to me, there's a lot of people talking about adding some safeties. I feel pretty doggone confident about Fahim Delane. This is not an area I'm going to go spend tier 1A money on, that's for sure. Maybe tier B money, but not tier 1A money. And then we move to the defensive line, and we'll start at tackle. One tech, edge. I'm all for, like, if you're gonna say three, two of them go right there. You need those on the D line. So that's where I'm thinking, put that money. Now, other guys that have entered right now that have the potential, you'd love to see safety Tafik Boyd potentially get an opportunity to come up and get some interest from the Buckeyes. You'd love to see Coy Parrish from Minnesota, a guy they were in on, who chose Minnesota, but the Buckeyes almost got him in the end. He ended up staying home in Minnesota. He's entered the portal, and there's been some Miami buzz with him as well. Miami is doing what you do when you are right there. When you're right there and you got momentum, you seize the momentum, you go spend money, you bring in talent, and that's what they're doing. The Buckeyes, having lost, now's the time to go do it. It's just day one, but we're not seeing a lot of momentum and a lot of names linked to the Buckeyes as far as the top tier prospects. We have seen, the kid out of Gardner-Webb, which could be a very good football player, and that's great. But you want to get some top tier talent, and sometimes you got to get on this stuff right away